After that, we have the chance to talk about that and have a conversation explode beyond our thinking, beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. One of his of advocacy. Every problem is a relationship problem, rather than Mr. Tom Hagerty.
Good evening,
Well,
Daniel. How are you?
I'm fabulous, Mr. Tom. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I may?
Yes, I am a retired business executive. I retired in March of 2024 after a long career in consulting. And right now, I am in the process of popularizing a book that I wrote that was issued in early 2024 called The Business of Relationships. And it's been a pretty exciting run in early retirement. And as we talked off camera, I'm also the very proud father of a son who's about to be married in 2 weeks. So we are preparing for that wedding and very excited about it.
And congratulations, Mr. Tom. Congratulations indeed. Sooner or later, you will be a grandfather. For sure.
Daniel, I've got to tell you, Daniel, I'm a grandfather already 4 times
Oh,
over. My daughter and her
okay.
husband have 4 children. So this young man is a
An
few years
addition.
behind his sister, but we'll see if he catches up someday.
For sure, he will catch up. And today, Mr. Tom, let's talk about why Americans don't trust each other and how to fix it. So tell us, if you had to pinpoint a single biggest driver of the collapse of a social trust, is it primarily political polarization, the erosion of local community, that rise social media, or economic anxiety?
I think the lack of trust, which is damning today in society, especially in America, where we have 68% of our citizens believe that most people can't be trusted. And that is a huge increase over just 50 years ago when confidence in institutions and confidence in each other was very, very high. Right now, what we're seeing is that the Pew Research Center, which did some extensive research into this in 2019 and 2020, what they find to be the number one cause of the lack of trust, surprisingly enough, all revolves around the decline in reliability. We have people in our society who say that diminishing trust is because people are perceived not to be reliable anymore. So I think that cuts across all political spectrum, all socioeconomic strata, all cultural divides, all racial and ethnic, orientation, if you will. And that perceived decline in reliability is something that about half of us in America attribute that to the decline in trust, is just basic reliability. When you go beyond that a little bit, Daniel, you look into things like the cultural and social factors which are involved. Um, there's increased loneliness. There's excessive individualism in America. Um, on the loneliness front, it's not a mystery to me to say that trust is declining if you have 60% of your population, your adult population, saying that loneliness is my constant companion. 25% of males under the age of 35 report having no close friends, zero. So when I look at that kind of statistic, and then you factor in the fractured political culture that we're in, I don't think it's any mystery to say that one of the fundamentals of a good, solid personal relationship, which is trust, is in serious decline.
Indeed, Mr. Tom. So tell us, what is all about your business or your book, The Business of Relationships?
Well, the business of relationships is a series of essays that seek to use business wisdom from leaders like Steve Jobs and Sheryl Sandberg and Carly Fiorina and Jack Welch and Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and many others. These leaders have made pronouncements in the past that go way beyond just being relevant in the boardroom, and I think they really get to the core of the qualities that are necessary, Daniel, for thriving personal relationships. I mean, if you think about it, you're going to be in a personal relationship with somebody, and that demands that you have perspective. It demands that you create honesty and trust, or resilience, or change, or humility, or respect, and risk. All of those qualities are essential to have a great personal relationship. And the business leaders that I've written about in my book basically say that, these foundational qualities, these 12 qualities, can be nurtured if you pay attention to what someone has already said and done in the business world and the relationships that they've created throughout their lives.
Interesting book for sure, Mr. Tom. And what are your struggles in writing The Business of Relationships?
I think the struggle for me, Daniel, was always to look at a quote and try to see how I could take it out of context and apply it to a relationship. I'll give you, for instance, one that is in my chapter on the subject of change. Jack Welch was the chairman and CEO of General Electric for over 20 years. He guided the company to over 200 acquisitions. He tripled shareholder value, and he was widely known as someone that really believed in a meritocracy, a merit-based system when it came to employment and when it came to advancement. And Jack Welch gave a speech to his business leaders, the direct reports to him of all of the various business units like GE Finance, GE Aircraft Engines, GE Medical Systems, GE Healthcare, all of the leaders of those major divisions. He gave a speech to them, and he said, "If you are not number one or number two in your marketplace, I will fix you, close you, or sell you." And that became a mantra that followed by the phrase change before you have to. He was basically giving them a warning and a challenge to change before you have to. If you're not number one or number two, you better get on the stick and get moving. And that's one example of a quote that was a challenge for me because I love those 5 words. I think they're very powerful when you say change before you have to. But how could that apply to a personal relationship? With your spouse, with your children, with your neighbors, with a business associate, possibly with someone in your own church or synagogue. And where I came down on the side of change before you have to is really saying to all of us in relationships, change before you have to the passive aggressive nature that is wrecking your family. Change before you have to the financial irresponsibility that threatens your family. Change before you have to the budding addiction that threatens to get control of you and destroy your family. Those are the kind of things that I think a mantra like change before you have to can apply to. And there were several by Steve Jobs. There was one by Bill Gates that talked about success being a lousy teacher because it seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. I think a lot of times that is applicable in a relationship as well. So these essays were a lot of fun for me to write, but they were challenging in terms of how to take those quotes out of context and apply them to a relationship. have it make sense to the reader.
Mr. Som, what is the single most important relational skill that top executives have mastered that, when brought home, can most dramatically improve a personal relationship?
I think something that you will find in 100% of senior executives is accountability. They have a heightened sense of personal responsibility, of being able to look in the mirror and say, what is it that I can do? How can I make the situation better? And I think they thrive on that challenge. And I think that is something that many of us shy away from in a personal relationship. We want to look outward to see who's to blame. We want to look away from problems. We want to um, resolve conflict through avoidance rather than through, direct confrontation, if you will, or taking on the problem. That is something that is foreign to a senior executive. They would never look away from a problem, a festering problem. They would never look outward and say someone else is to blame. Those executives that are really successful, and I talk about Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Carly Fiorina, Sheryl Sandberg, Jack Welch, we mentioned him earlier. Many, many senior executives, Charles Schwab, Tom Peters, on and on, Catherine Graham from the Washington Post back in the day. All of them have a unique capacity to take personal responsibility. So I think number one, first and foremost, in a relationship, if we are going to imitate an executive, we would be imitating the degree of accountability we have, the ability to look in the mirror, and the ability to take personal responsibility for the thriving health of the relationship.
Thriving relationship indeed. And Mr. Tom, many people feel they have to wear masks at work. How does your book help someone take off that mask to be more authentic in their personal life, using the very skills they learned while wearing it?
That's an interesting question. I think it would depend on what the mask is that you're wearing to work. I often say to people that you want to bring your authentic self to work, unless that authentic self in some area is going to be harmful to your relationships at work. I think many of us can feel very secure in certain circumstances, certain audiences, if you will, certain groups of people where we feel less secure with others. I think the art form now, especially for younger people, is not necessarily wearing the mask, but knowing what is appropriate for certain settings. What is appropriate in the business world may not be appropriate at church. What is appropriate on the sideline of your children's soccer games may not be appropriate in a back fence conversation with a neighbor. The conduct and the uh, call it orientation that is appropriate in one setting may not be in another. And I think the younger generation, especially the ones coming up behind us, need to be aware that there are certain audiences for which certain conduct, certain opinions, certain expressions are just not going to be appropriate where they would be with others.
Interesting, Mr. Tom. And in a business, active listening is crucial for understanding clients' needs. How can this same discipline focus be applied to truly hear a partner or a child in a way that transforms the dynamic?
Well, look at the characteristics of active listening. When we teach courses and when we read and when we listen to presenters talking about active listening, they talk about things like making eye contact. They talk about things like leaning forward. They talk about things like using hand gestures in responses. They talk about maintaining a posture of being open, literally open palms, kind of a posture. And I think those are the kind of things that you say, if I'm willing to do that with a client, and if I'm willing to position myself with a colleague at work to basically convey to them that they have 100% of my attention. My phone is not on the table. I'm not looking at it. I'm engaged with them. I'm asking perceptive questions. I'm listening and responding in kind. Those are the kind of things that we would do with a colleague or a client. So they would be exactly the same things that we would want to do with a spouse or a child, or in some cases, an aging parent or a sibling, conveying that fact that they are the most important person in the room at that moment in time. And that is exactly what we do when we meet with colleagues and clients. We should be doing it for the health of our relationships when we get home.
Mr. Tom, let's talk about the conflict resolution from the boardroom. How can the principles of negotiating high stakes business deal or mediating a team dispute to use to escalate a heated argument with the loved one?
Well, I really believe that it's kind of a double-edged observation I'm going to give you here. The younger generation that is coming up through the ranks right now is uniquely unprepared for conflict resolution. That same Pew Research Center that I cited earlier about the lack of trust, they talk about the lack of conflict resolution skills as being one of the biggest reasons that relationships are in dysfunction now, and that's part of the trust factor. That entire ball of wax, if you will, is woven into the trust factor as well. But you see in many people, they just haven't learned how to navigate the difficult conversation, and instead of discussing an issue, they avoid it, or they withdraw from it, or even worse, they attack. The credibility of the other person. And we talk about ghosting people. We talk about gaslighting people. We talk about it's easier to fix or to leave relationships rather than to fix them. I think it's a witch's brew, Daniel, of things that are coming to a head right now that actually have exacerbated these things called workplace ghosting, where people just don't come to a job one day because they quit. They don't bother telling anyone they quit. They figure, I'll never be back at that company again. I don't need anyone there, so therefore I will just leave, and they'll send me my last paycheck or whatever. So I think when it comes to conflict resolution skills, whether it is in business, which is declining, or whether it's at home, which is clearly declining with the divorce rate and the loneliness epidemic that we're under, I think those conflict resolution skills and that courage to engage in productive dialogue, oftentimes heated dialogue, but productive nonetheless. I think that those skills are really in short supply and need to be bolstered.
Mr. Tom, as an author, what are your short term and long term goals?
My short-term goals, Daniel, are pretty simple. I have 2 weeks to put a heck of a speech together about a son that I dearly love and have enjoyed watching him grow, and he and his fiance are going to make a great couple, already are a great couple. So I'm going to have to make some cogent comments at that wedding reception as his father about what I think he brings to the table in a marriage. And so that is in the immediate short term, the next 2 weeks. I'm going to be focusing on getting that speech together. Longer term goals for me, Daniel, is enjoying the writing process, enjoying the speaking process that engages people to talk about relationships like we have here. I certainly want to appear on more podcasts. I certainly want to talk to more business groups because I think relationships are foundational to success, either in our personal lives or our professional lives. And if the wisdom of these executives can help people to create those kind of thriving relationships, I'm very excited about that prospect.
Good luck to your goals and good luck to the speech, Mr. Tom. And looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be an author like you?
If you want to be an author like me, I would say that perseverance is the number one thing. The voices in your head are going to tell you that you're not qualified to do this. The voices in your head are going to tell you somebody's already done what you're trying to do. Um, the business is tough. There's a million new books released every year in America. Uh, Amazon, captures 70 to 75% of the market. There are 33 million titles available. The prospect of you breaking out to overnight success is very, very slim. But if you believe in your message and you believe that people need to hear what you have to say, then I would say persevere. Carry on, do the best you can, and enjoy the ride. We're here for such a short time, Daniel. You might as well enjoy the ride.
Yes, life is too short, people, and stop procrastinating if you have the passion to write, write, and share to the world. And Mr. Tom, can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
I would say a book that recently influenced me was by Brian Klaas. Last name is spelled Klaas. And it is a book called Fluke. And
Fluke.
it is about the randomness of the universe and individual actions within that universe. It's an absolutely fascinating book that gave me the perspective, if you will, or at least reinforced the perspective that much of what we do is not going to be remembered. Much of what we do is not going to become famous. Much of what we do is not going to be everlasting. So, the sense of risk that you can take in that environment is huge. And we need more people who are willing to step up and take risks that are productive so that we can continue to grow as a society and as a people.
Thank you for that recommended book, Mr. Tom. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season. I'm a book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Comedy geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Tom, if someone could start with just one thing tomorrow, what is the simplest, most actionable business practice that you can import into the closet relationship to see if an immediate positive shift?
I think you'll have an immediate positive shift in any relationship if you are first and foremost willing to look in the mirror. When there's a situation, a problem, a challenge, look in the mirror and say, what can I do? What is my responsibility? What is my goal here? And quit pointing outward at someone else or something else, and instead look at yourself as the key driver to making a productive change and making the relationship better.
Mr. Tom Hagerty, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Thank you, Daniel. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, so Mr. Tom, where do people buy your book?
They can buy the book on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and selected bookstores in their location. But Amazon, as I said before, is the number one player and the biggest, best, and fastest. So go to Amazon.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Tom Hagerty because if you support him, more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Mr. Tom, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
Marticon people, see you soon.